and welcome to another Friday edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Audrey Williams. Are you ready for the back-to-school rush? It's just around the corner. Parents and guardians, we hope you're ahead of the game and getting everything in place to ensure your children are ready for a successful return to the classroom. In today's program, we will highlight some of the government's support for those in need, along with other stories and updates you won't want to miss. So, stay with us.
That dripping tap may not seem like much, but drop by drop, water is being wasted. The same goes for a running toilet, a leaking pipe, or leaving the tap running while brushing your teeth. Small habits can add up to a lot of wasted water. So today, check around your home. Fix those leaks. Sometimes it's simply about paying attention. Don't let good water go down the drain. Good day, I'm Jabertha Atkinson, and this is your JIS News for Friday, August 28, 2026. Government has signed a wage agreement with the largest umbrella group of trade unions representing public sector workers, offering 10% over 2 years and a one-off grant payment. The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service and the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, JCTU, yesterday signed the heads of agreement for the period April 1, 2025 to March 31, 2028. The signing, which took place at the ministry, also involved other trade union representatives. Under the agreement, there is to be a non-taxable $80,000 one-off payment covering the first year of the wage period. Public sector workers will also receive a 5% salary increase effective April 1, 2026, and a further 5% increase that comes into effect on April 1, 2027 to be calculated on the adjusted salary following the first increase. The 2.5% annual increment to public sector workers will also continue to be paid during the period. Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Favour Williams, says it must be acknowledged that the agreement was not reached in ordinary times, but against the backdrop of the devastating economic impact of Category 5 Hurricane Melissa.
The assessment by ECLAC and the Planning Institute of Jamaica puts the total at close to 57% of GDP. The consequences of that goes straight to public finances. When a country takes a hit of this magnitude, the conventional response is a wage freeze. There is no freeze in this agreement. There are no layoffs. There is no deferral of what was already owed. What it is a real increase, honestly funded, in a very tough year.
Despite the economic challenges, Minister Williams says the government was deliberate in its decision to avoid a wage freeze, as it recognizes the plight of public sector workers who are themselves necessary to the country's recovery. But she admits the decision was not a costless one.
It means that other things that we wanted to do will move more slowly. It means the return to our debt anchor, our debt to GDP target, takes longer. We accepted that because a public service that cannot pay its bills at home cannot be asked to hold a country together in a crisis.
President of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, St. Patrice Ennis, praised his fellow union reps and the Ministry of Finance team for maintaining a calm and positive negotiation atmosphere.
We didn't have any rancor at any time of these meetings. It was in a good atmosphere. We exchanged, we were firm, and we know the situation, and we believe we took the negotiation as far as we could and we believe it is an agreement that reflects the hard work both yourself, the team from the Ministry of Finance, and the diligence of the team from the JCTU that has brought us here today.
While the wage component has now been concluded, negotiations will continue on several important matters with the various bargaining units. Meanwhile, the Minister of Finance and the Public Service has served a notice to public sector unions that the government is looking to restore the rule placing a cap on the wage to GDP ratio. Up to 2023, Jamaica had a rule in law that the public sector wage bill was not to exceed 9% of GDP. This was repealed as the public sector compensation restructuring exercise changed what counted as wages, which meant the old number no longer measured the same thing. But Minister Favour Williams says 3 years later, this has to be rectified as the present situation is not sustainable and neither the state nor workers are served by the continued suspension.
Without an anchor, every negotiation starts from zero. Every round becomes an argument about whether there is money at all, rather than a discussion around how to divide an envelope that both sides can see. And when the next shock comes, the adjustment could arrive as something that we do not want. Many of the persons in this room lived through wage freeze. That is what the absence of an anchor looks like from a worker's point of view.
Minister Williams asserts that she's not putting a number on the table now for the new rate.
What I'm putting on the table is a principle and an invitation. Let us settle this together before the next round rather than during it.
Compensation of employees now stands at close to 13.5% of GDP. In other news, the Office of the Cabinet is moving to strengthen policy coordination, implementation, and performance monitoring across government. This as the public service adjusts to demands of the post-Hurricane Melissa environment. Cabinet Secretary and Head of the Civil Service, Audrey Sewell, says there can be no return to business as usual. She asserts that ministries, departments, and agencies must become more agile, improve coordination, and strengthen how they deliver results. She was speaking following the Cabinet Office's annual strategic planning retreat held in Trelawney recently. Mrs. Sewell says the hurricane has highlighted the need for greater efficiency, accountability, and responsiveness across the public service. Accordingly, the Cabinet Office will focus on improving whole-of-government coordination, strengthening policy submissions to Cabinet, and enhancing systems to monitor and track performance across ministries, departments, and agencies. The Cabinet Support and Policy Division and the Performance Management and Evaluation Branch are expected to play key roles in advancing these efforts. The Cabinet Secretary's comments follow a similar call from Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness for greater collaboration and improved performance across the public service. Approximately 1.6 kilometers of roadway between Robins Bay and Strawberry Fields in St. Mary has been rehabilitated to improve commuting for both residents and tourists that traverse the area. The $42.7 million investment comes from the Tourism Enhancement Fund, TEF, under its Roads to Attractions program. Wadmore Construction Limited was contracted to execute the project, and the completed road was officially opened on Wednesday. Minister of Tourism Edmund Bartlett stresses that its value goes beyond the money spent and asphalt laid.
It is measured in what the rehabilitated road makes possible. And what it makes possible is easier movement for residents, improved access for visitors, and a stronger connection between community enterprise and national growth.
At the same time, he says the intervention is part of the ministry's deliberate strategy to widen Jamaica's tourism footprint beyond its traditional corridors. The Robins Bay to Strawberry Fields road rehabilitation follows the recently opened $27.5 million Fontabelle to Geddestown Road in the same parish.
What we are doing now, deliberately, and in sequence, is extending that corridor eastwards through St. Mary and on towards Portland, so that the strength of Ocho Rios becomes the gateway to a much wider tourism footprint rather than its outer boundaries.
The National Housing Trust is reminding retirees who have contributed to the NHT that they are able to access all contribution refunds to which they are entitled. Manager of Corporate Communications and Public Affairs, Daniel Edwards, says a special arrangement is in place to accommodate retirees.
What happens under this special refund arrangement for retirees is that refunds that are not yet due, you are able to access, and even refunds that are due, because I think there is a misnomer, misunderstanding that once a refund year has passed, that refund is no longer accessible. So if you made contributions in 1978, 1979, 1980, 1981, 2000, and you have not collected those refunds, they're there for you, that you can collect it at the time of retirement.
Ms. Edwards says the NHT holds refunds for 7 years and pays in the 8th year. It is now paying for the year 2018. The NHT is encouraging retirees in need of assistance to contact its customer care team at their parish office, send an email to wecare@nht.gov.jm, or call 876-929-6500. And finally, speakers and clerks to the Houses of Parliament across the region will share challenges with succession planning, how to navigate this transition, as well as other issues being faced. The conversations will take place at the 48th Commonwealth Parliamentary Association CPA's Regional Conference of the Caribbean, Americas, and the Atlantic CAA region. Speaker of the House of Representatives and Chair of the CPA, Juliet Holness, says the lessons and gains made in this area locally are now being shared with the region.
So one of the day session does exactly that. We have asked clerks across the region to say to us, what are the gaps that you have in your parliament? What are the issues and the negatives you have? What are the suggestions you have? So that it can come back to all of us now as presiding officers collectively. And we incorporated in the Speakers Conference a representative from the Clerks Conference coming to say collaboratively, this is what is coming from the clerks to you as speakers.
Mrs. Holness says the expected outcome of the conference is a stronger parliament across the region and a more respected Jamaican parliament. The 48th CPA conference will take place from August 31 to September 5 at Moon Palace, Jamaica, under the theme Strengthening Parliaments in the Digital Age. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Jabertha Atkinson. Thanks for watching.
Study, earn, and gain real experience with the LEAP program. Build your skills while you learn and take the next step towards employment. Your government is working for you.
Thank you for staying with us. We now bring you part 3 of our JIS Ministerial Update, focusing on the Program of Advancement through Health and Education, PATH. Here's more from the Minister of Labour and Social Security, Pernell Charles Jr., on how the program has supported thousands of Jamaican students and families, and what changes are being made to strengthen the program and address emerging needs.
You're watching JIS Ministerial Update. We're speaking with Labour and Social Security Minister Pernell Charles Jr. Now we're shifting gears a little bit to the Program of Advancement through Health and Education, PATH. Now Minister Charles said in his sectoral presentation in May that effective immediately changes were being made to the PATH program so that applicants would be approved faster. Minister Charles, has that been done, and if so, what kind of improvements have you seen?
So firstly, the PATH, well, I used to say PATH program, and I'm always advised by my team is that PATH program, PATH. PATH is so important. One of the most valuable programs that we have in the entire country, because it focuses on families who need the help, vulnerable families. And there are so many examples of successful professionals now who were on PATH, who will tell you the positive impact of not just the monetary support, but the other elements of PATH that help with school, in terms of scholarships, the support with the social workers, just a general collaboration to make sure that these families can break that generational cycle of poverty. So when we assessed it and we made comments in the sectoral, it was more than just trying to improve PATH. It's looking on the wider scale of where Jamaicans are, their vulnerabilities, and what will be required for us to give families a real fighting chance to be able to provide the support needed for this next generation. So yes, all of the things that we spoke about in terms of provisional applications and other recommendations have been activated. And I use the word activated because they've not all been implemented yet. Because as was said, the process of implementation will take some time. That whole modification of the system and different adjustments in terms of the mindset also of the persons who operate the system will take us some time. But what's important is that they have been immediately activated. Information and directions have been sent out to the parish offices. The various lists have been compiled. Our team here is working assiduously to make sure that everything is accurate, to make sure that as we remove parts of the bureaucracy to allow facilitation of persons on the program, that we do not dilute it to the point where it's no longer accountable. So that balance is also something that is very critical, and that's a stage where we are now in terms of the activation towards full implementation.
That was so loaded in terms of listening to you speak, in terms of differentiating between activating the move to get the system faster and that actually being implemented, and then towards the end you're saying pulling out some of the bureaucracy. How much of an issue is that for you and for the government really, where bureaucracy is concerned? Like, you have an idea at the policy level where this is the direction where the government wants to go, but in terms of how long it takes to be implemented. And I could hear you at pains just now to pretty much say, boy, we want this to go this way. It's not yet implemented. We're trying to remove some of the bureaucracy.
Well, if it wasn't difficult, they wouldn't need us here. So we expect the challenge. The bureaucracy in and of itself is not the biggest problem, because bureaucracy, in its definition, it's important to have these various checks and balances. It is when bureaucracy is not properly executed, where it is used as an excuse for delay, where it is used as an excuse for persons not to do what they should do. That's when it becomes very frustrating. But that is where leadership steps in, where we now have to find the various mechanisms to put in place the protocols and the programs and the policies and the frameworks that allow for the machinery to work towards the effective benefit of the people that we are here to serve. So breaking down the bureaucracy, quote unquote, is a big part of that process between activation and implementation. And yes, it's challenging, but again, you wouldn't have doctors, lawyers, politicians, journalists if you didn't have these challenges. It's part of what we're here to do. And I do believe that what we have recommended, if and when implemented, Jamaicans, particularly those that benefit from PATH, will see, and those who want to benefit but have not been able to benefit for many different reasons, will see and feel the impact of better policies, and they'll be able to receive the benefit to help their children who are going to school, to help those pregnant and lactating mothers, to help the seniors who need to transition from PATH to social pension, and ultimately to help the vulnerable families in Jamaica get that fighting chance that they need to make sure that the next generation is not in the same or a worse situation. That's the goal. PATH has been very important and continues to be very important, and we want to make sure that it has the full impact of its intention.
Is there any other changes to PATH that you'd like to see?
Several changes, but my grandmother used to say, one bite at a time. But yeah, there are changes in terms of even the process of linking PATH to some of the support that is required at the Ministry of Health. There are changes in terms of the appeal process, where persons who are not immediately or who are rejected and seek to appeal, the nuances and intricacies in that process. And I think that there is a need now for us to have a full evaluation of relevance of some of what we do in PATH. So you have heard many persons talk about the situation of, well, I didn't get on because I don't have a pit latrine, and when I have a flush toilet, I can't get on. It's not true, but it's also not false. And it's because of the software that is utilized to have the initial preliminary assessment in PATH. So that's another massive change that needs to be implemented with other things, is having the modernization of that software, making sure that the system actually works, so that when persons sit in front of the officers, there are no glitches, there's no system down for 6 hours, and many other things, particularly relating to the IT infrastructure that are needed to make sure that PATH can carry out its work efficiently.
Yeah. Well, you spoke about bureaucracy earlier and how things are usually done. Usually at this stage of the program, I'd be wrapping up and thanking you at home for watching or wherever in the world they're watching from. But the minister was asking the production team here if any of them had a question, and so our producer, Kadia Lowen Knight, has taken 2 questions from members of the production team, and she's joining us right now on set to ask the minister directly the questions that the team has come up with.
All right, Minister, I have a question here. How can a Jamaican citizen without a TRN or NIS get support from the ROOF program?
So we built into the ROOF program a mechanism to allow for a proxy to be identified, particularly for those situations where persons did not have the documentation needed for them to be completely eligible. And so those persons would have had to identify a proxy. That proxy would put their TRN and their information, and we would work with them to give support to that vulnerable family.
All right, and I do have another question. Now, there are persons asking for people who are still waiting on their benefit. Why is the process taking so long?
Firstly, again, I've been out there on the ground. I've been with the families that have been impacted, and 1 day is too long. But we have to operate within our realities. And so it takes long because it is a massive program and intervention that has to maintain its accountability while we're driving efficiency. And that's the primary reason why there's a protracted process to make sure that whatever we're doing, we do it right. And the people who we give the money to is the right people, so that we don't get problems at the back end. But again, when you hear it from persons, you have to appreciate their frustration, whether it is severe damage or minor damage. All the families that were impacted deserve support. And the government of Jamaica, we're trying our best to make sure that we can contribute to the restoration and the recovery for all of those families.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, so doing things a little bit differently here, Minister. I hope you don't think that we were ambushing you at all. You invited it.
No. I welcome it.
But thank you at home so much for watching. This has been a JIS Ministerial Update with Labour and Social Security Minister Pernell Charles Jr. taking all our questions here at the JIS from the production team here at the JIS. Thank you at home for watching. Pleasant viewing.
Is the lowest it has been in over 25 years. Due to greater investment in our security forces, we are building a nation of peace. Your government is working for you.
Up next, the government continues to support banana farmers as they navigate uncertainty and work to protect their livelihoods. At the recent Denby Agricultural, Industrial and Food Show, farmers received valuable information on strengthening their operations, managing risks, and safeguarding their crops. The details next.
The Denby Agricultural Industrial Food Show is more than just a 3-day event. It is where food security, innovation, and research come together under one umbrella.
For the Banana Board, this year's focus was on resilience. It came at a critical time when the country is looking to rebuild and grow after the devastation caused by Hurricane Melissa.
Resilience is what the Banana Board is about. And resilience is what we had to prove after Hurricane Melissa.
The Banana Board used Denby to showcase how farmers can prepare their fields to recover more quickly.
After Hurricane Melissa, we promised Jamaica that we would see bananas back on the market between 7 to 9 months. You can come back seven months if you prepared your fields to bounce back after a damage. And preparing the fields involves a number of things, but the major one is pruning. So if you prune your fields well, so that when the hurricane comes in the season, the suckers are at a decent height. If the mother plant goes, then the next one will come, and you can get fruits from that in the most ideal of situation within 7 months. So we teach persons how to do it and how to do it well. We teach them how to ensure that they have suckers available so that they don't have to ask for planting material. One of the reasons why the industry came back so well is that we didn't have to buy seeds and seedlings from overseas. Bananas reproduce itself. It generates itself. And so what we do is prepare it to regenerate very quickly after the hurricane.
But resilience goes beyond restoring production. The Banana Board has also used Denby to demonstrate ways farmers can improve productivity and create additional income from their crops.
So we're teaching persons how to make wine. We have banana bread on the outside. So those are the things that can add value to what we have. In addition to teaching persons how to, grow, ensuring that you do things that we believe are necessary, testing and sampling of your soil before you plant, while you're producing, to ensure you put on the right quantity of fertilizer so the production comes up in the shortest possible time.
Financial preparedness is another part of the strategy.
The Banana Board manages what is called the Banana and Planting Industry Catastrophe Fund. So when you register, you have to register before June. Registration starts in January, and by the end of March, you're supposed to be registered. Sometimes we give a little extension, depending on the situation. And once you're registered before the hurricane season starts, should there be a damage, you make a claim, and within a month, we guarantee you, within a month, the Banana Board pays out.
The lesson here is that recovery begins long before a hurricane arrives, and you're not alone in the planning. Recovery is assured through preparation, knowledge, financial planning, and the ability to adapt. And the Banana Board is there to help.
Before you go, we hope today's program has informed, inspired, and brightened your day. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for another refreshing edition of Jamaica Magazine, right here on this station. Missed a part of today's show? Catch the repeat and explore more stories at jis.gov.jm. I'm Audrey Williams. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Stay safe, and as always, walk good.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.